All right. We are here on SEC After Dark interview special. We're going to put it on the site as a standalone. We'll put it on the podcast on Friday for everybody to enjoy with the guys, the Hammer and Bossman Slim from Biscuits and SEC. How you guys doing?
Hey, we're doing great. Thanks so much for having us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yep,
and
doing awesome. Glad to be here.
yeah, how did you guys pick your handles? How did that come about?
Well, I'll take that one first, and then I'll send it over to the Hammer. But so for me, Boss Man was something that my little cousins came up with. I call my little cousin; he's about 7 years old. I call him Little Boss Man, and he calls me Big Boss Man. So that was the start of it. And then Slim is just something that I'm about 5'11", 6 feet, and so people have called me Slim, all my life. I've been a spring bean for a long time, so Slim just fit well, so we just stuck them together.
Okay, how about you,
Yeah,
Hammer?
he's always been a bit of a twig, so Slim works well. Yeah, the hammer. My name's Hank, so it's just sort of natural
Okay, I
ever
got you.
since.
So Hank Aaron
Yeah, ever
reference.
since Little League baseball, this they've kind of gone hand in hand. So it was just easy to when you want to pick a name. Well, the hammer.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a big stick in Little League baseball, and so people know I'm the older brother, and the Hammer's the younger brother. So we grew up together, and yeah, he was the big stick in Little League.
Okay, and just full disclosure to everybody, we got a couple of Texas A&M Aggies with us today, and we'll try to be gentle with them for all us over here, all the Eastern folks doing the
We're easily
show.
riled right now with all the SEC news.
Yeah, I bet you are. And we're going to get to that before this conversation is over, without a doubt. Now, talk a little bit about Biscuits and SEC. What you guys are. I know you. We all are a part of the One Team Media Group network. That group from that's putting together. We're slowly getting that done. What do you guys do? What can they expect from you, and where can people see you?
Absolutely. So, biggest thing we do right now is we do a weekly newsletter. In the off seasons, it's on Wednesdays, and then during the seasons, we have one on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then we just do a quick hitter on Saturday. And people can go find that biscuitsandsec.com. We're on social media on Instagram and Twitter and on Facebook at Biscuits and SEC. And there's a link there where you can sign up for our newsletter. And then when you go to our website, you'll also see that we're doing blog posts. We do them as often as we can. This is our side job, so we love SEC football and we write on it as much as possible. And when we do and have some more to say, we'll post it up there on biscuitsandsec.com on our blog.
What about you, Hank?
Yeah. So best place to find us is probably Twitter. Our Biscuits and SEC handle. We've obviously got the website, biscuitsandsec.com. We run an Aggie centric blog as well, the Junction blog, pretty much very similar setup. We've got the website. We'll post, articles a couple times a week, and then we've got a weekly newsletter that'll ramp up during the season and go out a couple times a week. But yeah, I mean, we just, I think like a lot of people, we love talking SEC football and got pretty bored during the pandemic last year and started the website about a year ago now. Really, just I think with the delayed season, we ended up initially, posting our first article maybe in September, but so we've been around for about a year now. But yeah, we're always on Twitter, Instagram, and then that's probably the best way to contact us. I think we have some way to get a hold of us through the website, but Twitter and Instagram is probably the best way to follow along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just for some background on Biscuits and SEC, for a long time, Hank and we grew up as Aggies. We grew up watching the Big 12, and then I was at Texas A&M when Johnny Manziel was there in 2012, and for his years. So, we loved coming into the SEC. We've embraced it as Aggies, and then Biscuits and SEC kind of came from that. We religiously follow SEC football now, and have for years, and watch all the shows on YouTube, watch SEC Network all the time, and have seen all the blogs and listened to so many podcasts. So while we enjoy all of that, we kind of felt it needed a breath of fresh air. And Hank and I, would text about this stuff all the time. And oh man, we can do that. We can do that. And so finally, the pandemic hit, and we were like, yeah, we can do that. So we talked about it amongst ourselves and figured out how to get it done, how to build a website, how to get a logo. I had my good friend Kelly Richard, designed our logo. She did a great job. And it was just kind of us brainstorming with names for Biscuits and SEC of, what do people in the South really like? Well, they love food, they love tailgating, and they love SEC football. So it was just kind of a mixture of all those that came together. And then for the Junction blog, people know the Junction Boys. And so that one was pretty easy.
Yeah.
It was just the Junction blog. So
yeah, kind of wrote itself. I think
Yeah.
during the pandemic, we don't even really know how media changed over the course of the last year. I think in 5 years we will look back at this moment as like, okay, that happened. I mean, you're even seeing like these streaming services pop up, like Notre Dame with a game on Peacock. The SEC and
Exactly.
Disney. The SEC is going to put a game on ESPN Plus moving forward. So it's going to change, and it's not so much about cable subscriptions that you get like when Texas A&M came to the SEC, where that was the big conversation. Now it's more about eyeballs that you can totally gather. How much do you bring to the pie? And it's really interesting to me.
I think you're exactly right about that. And I mean, I think that your show is a testament to that, right? There's so many of these different shows. We've seen many other blogs pop up, that, people came up with during the pandemic, and we're realizing that and seeing that the landscape is changing. And while people thought that it might be saturated, it really isn't. This pie is big, and it's only going to get bigger as the SEC, footprint grows. So I think there's a lot of room for people like us. And I think that, like you said, even at the higher levels, it's changing very rapidly.
Yeah, it really is. Let's move on to, SEC football. And we have to start with expansion. I know that Bevo's coming to the conference. Saw Bevo's Horns Off is one of the songs that is played at Texas A&M games. Like they're playing Ole Miss and playing that song. What do you guys think of Texas and Oklahoma coming to the conference?
I'll let the Hammer take that one first.
Yeah. So initially, I'll be honest, I was pretty mad about it. And as it's obviously, it's a done deal now, just a matter of when. And as we've had more time to think about it, I can look at it a little more rationally, I guess, and a little less emotionally. Because, yeah, initially I was mad. It's funny. A lot of Texas fans you'll see on Twitter will say that A&M was mad because they're scared of Texas or OU, which it's just not the case. I mean, if you look at what primarily Texas, Oklahoma, I have no issue with them. I think they'll fit in great. But Texas, what they've done on the field the last decade, really since A&M left, it's nothing special. They were a very average team in the Big 12. That's not to say they won't come in and do well. They might. But to think that A&M or any program in the SEC is scared of them is just silly. But really, I think what it boiled down to is I just didn't want anything good to happen to Texas, right? We left them behind for a reason. We don't like them. And the Big 12 was floundering. It was a bad league. And they're getting a lifeline, so to speak. Not that they don't bring value. They bring a ton of value. But they're getting a big lifeline here by joining the SEC that's going to help them. So initially, yeah, I was mad. But now that it's happened, it's turned into more excitement because I'm ready to have that game back. I always wanted to play them. Even though, whoever, you can blame A&M, Texas at this point, it's all, everybody's had their faults in that relationship. But I missed that game, even though we weren't, necessarily on the best terms. Thanksgiving was always different when we weren't playing Texas. So now that we're going to be in the same conference again, I'm excited. It'll be good to have that rivalry back. And frankly, it'll be good to settle the score on the field for the first time in a while, rather than arguing with people on Twitter about, who's better this year and whose loss meant more, whose win meant more. I mean, it's silly. And now that we will be playing, that's what it comes down to, right? I mean, whoever wins is going to have bragging rights. So I'm looking forward to it now. And, when you look at it for the whole SEC, it puts them in a great spot. So it's a no brainer. It had to be done. So yeah, we're looking forward now. We're ready.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself there. I think, initially I was pretty upset about it. I was pretty ticked. A&M left the Big 12 and left UT and, made that split for a reason. A&M was tired of dealing with UT, and so was Colorado and Nebraska before them and many others. So the fact that they were coming in, I felt like it was a little bit of letting the wolf in the hen house, so to speak. But after I had some time to think about it, like Hank said, it was a no-brainer that they had to come in and that expansion was kind of inevitable. Texas brings a lot of clout as far as, money is concerned. So it just made sense on a lot of fronts. And then now the game's coming back, and we cannot wait for the first time that they walk into Kyle Field. It is going to be a blast. Aggies are known for hissing. I think there's going to be 105,000 boos raining down, on UT Longhorns when they walk through that tunnel. So I don't think the rivalry has ever been as heated as it is now, and that's to me a good thing for college football. So I'm really excited about it now, and not only that, but you got to talk about OU as well. And OU, while they can't beat anybody in the SEC in the playoffs, we're happy to kick their butt during the regular season. So I'm happy to welcome them in. Somebody was saying the other day, I think it was Joel Klatt, who said they're going to come in and be the number 1 or 2 best team in the SEC right away, and that is just not true. There's no way that's going to happen. They're going to have some growing pains, and I expect in 10 years you're going to look back and say, well, how many conference championships in the first 10 years of the SEC did Oklahoma and Texas win? I would bet you it's maybe 2, maybe. So yeah, we'll see. Anyway, I'm excited to have them.
Yeah, and as a team that has played in that crazy hated rivalry, kind of filling the gap since Texas and Texas A&M went away. We moved to Thanksgiving. Weird stuff happens on that game. Mm-hmm. Texas and Texas A&M, by the way, is like Mississippi State and Ole Miss on steroids. That level of hate is special, and just weird stuff happens. I don't know if you guys will get the home game when it comes back, or they will. I think they're up as far as the home and home going back and forth because it ended on y'all's field, correct?
That's correct. I was actually at that game. It was Justin Tucker, the opera singer, who beat us on a last-second field goal. And so I'll never forget that game. Walking out of that stadium was not fun that night. But, yeah, it should be – Texas should get it first. However, A&M may have had a chip to play, right, when Texas came to the SEC. So we'll see what A&M's chip was. Maybe that was the chip. We get them first in Kyle Field. We'll see.
Yep. So let's move on to the rest of the SEC. What storylines are you guys looking forward to this season? What are you looking at? Who are the teams that you're paying attention to? Who are the teams that's going to fall by the wayside?
Hank, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot to look at. Just sticking right now in the SEC West, I think LSU is a big unknown, right? They were not very good last year, sort of came on at the end of the season, but they return a ton. I mean, they didn't – from going from 2019 to 2020, they lost a bunch, had some opt-outs. This year, they're pretty much bringing everybody back. Miles Brennan just went down. It seemed like Max Johnson was going to get that job anyway. So outside of depth, I'm not sure how big of a loss that is. So I'm just interested to see how they do. We know the talent is there. But it's just a matter of can they go toe-to-toe with Alabama again, and can they consistently put together games? I'm not quite sure. I mean, they're going to be breaking in new coordinators with Pelini out, and I believe Insminger retired. So it's just an unknown. They could be really, really good, or they could be pretty average, I think. And then obviously on the other side, the SEC East, I think it's kind of can Georgia stand up to Alabama, right? As an A&M fan, I'm hoping October 9th we can beat Alabama and come out of the West. But until someone does, I'm going to assume that Alabama is going to come out of the West. But Georgia's got probably, as good a chance as they've had to beat them. So if those two match up in the SEC championship game, I could see Georgia beating them. Alabama has a lot of unknowns as well. And Georgia, you'll get to see early on, right, with Clemson, whether they've got it or not, whether JT Daniels is what people are hyping him up to be, whether he is what he looked like last year against, some of the lesser teams in the SEC. If they can come out and beat Clemson, then I would be very surprised if they don't run the table, at least until the SEC title game. So those are probably the two teams I'm looking at the most as SEC as a whole. But again, there's a ton of different teams you could look at and storylines all over the place.
Yeah, I could go through, almost every team, and we could talk about this for about 2 hours, Stephen. But to keep it quick, the one storyline I'm interested in is all these new coaches in the SEC. You got Brian Harsin there at Auburn. You got Clark Lee over at Vanderbilt. You got Shane Beamer at South Carolina. And so you also got Heupel at Tennessee. You asked about, maybe some teams falling by the wayside. I think right now those teams are going to fall by the wayside, at least for next year. I think, Harsin, a lot of Auburn fans have been on Twitter talking about how Harsin has some momentum in recruiting. And then you look at the ranking and you're kind of like, I don't know about that. Now they're making some progress for sure. So we'll see how Auburn looks in the West. They got a big hill to climb. LSU, like Hank was saying, could be really good. A&M should be good. Alabama should be good. And then you're also going to have to deal with Lane Kiffin and your Ole Miss Rebels. So, and they're looking good. I mean, you look at what they have coming back on offense with Matt Corral and Jerry and Ely, and then almost that whole offensive line, if not the whole offensive line, I believe.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5, right. Mm-hmm. So, that is a scary offense. They kicked some tail last year with an all SEC schedule. So, they got a big hill to climb if you're Auburn. So the new coaches is something I'm looking at. I think Shane Beamer has a really big hill to climb at South Carolina. I don't think Will Muschamp left him a whole lot. And then you look at that recruiting class, from last year, I think it was in like the 80s when it was all said and done. So that cupboard is pretty bare over there. Obviously, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, he's just going to have a tough time, period. So if he can ever do anything with it, people would be impressed. Heupel, he's got, a high-flying offense. People are excited to see what he's got. He's got an interesting quarterback battle out there. But I don't expect too much from those teams next year. I think a few of them fall by the wayside. The other storyline I'm thinking about, I've been seeing a lot. Everybody's really high on Georgia right now for good reason. I think JT Daniels is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country next year. But I think people are kind of discounting Florida. I mean, they went to the SEC title game last year. Now that they do lose a lot, they lose Kyle Trask, they lose Kyle Pitts, they lose Kadarius Toney. But it's Florida. They're another big SEC power, and I don't think people are giving Emory Jones enough credit. I think they have a really good QB room, and I think Emory Jones is going to be a solid quarterback this year. So don't count the Gators out. I think they could be all right this year. So those are the few storylines I'm looking at in 30 seconds.
Yeah, talking about Florida and everything, everybody kind of poo-poos on Emory Jones, thinking that Florida is going to somehow run the same system and force feed the same offense that Kyle Trask run. No, right. It's going to look a lot more like what Nick Fitzgerald ran at Mississippi State.
Agreed. Yeah, I totally agree. They're going to utilize his legs, and you even saw some of that, when Emory Jones got some playing time last year. The offense would switch up, and they would, go to more run plays and play actions and things like that to get some receivers open for Jones. So, I think people are just kind of, poo-pooing Florida, and I don't think that's necessarily warranted. I think they're going to be solid this year.
Yeah, my co-host on SEC After Dark had Florida 3rd or 4th in the SEC East. And I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes, buddy. They're second place until further notice. I mean, how much can you really believe in Missouri? Although I love Connor Bazelak, how much can you really believe in Kentucky now that they've supposedly discovered the forward pass?
Right.
And stuff like that. Until it's proven otherwise, Florida is going to be a power in that division. The same way that Alabama is. I'm going to change the subject here real quick, and this is a perspective that I'm interested in getting from you guys. Alabama loses their quarterback, their running back, 2 wide receivers off of that team. John Mechie is the star coming back, Brian Robinson, a deep running back, and Bryce Young at quarterback. But the question mark is Bill O'Brien is calling the plays. This is the same man famous for trading away DeAndre Hopkins for a backup running back in the NFL. Is this the year that it could kind of jump up and bite Alabama?
We'll see. Alabama just reloads. It really
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter who they have at coordinator. It doesn't matter who's in the coaching room. It doesn't matter who the strength coach is, right? Alabama is Alabama, and they look the same every year, no matter who's in the coaching room. Bill O'Brien, like you said, I think he's interesting. I mean, you mentioned all those things he did. Well, he also he had Deshaun Watson, and went 4-10 and got fired in the middle of the season. So, yeah, he obviously has his issues, but so did Lane Kiffin. Before Lane Kiffin came into Alabama, Lane Kiffin had his issues too. And he ended up looking like a genius at Alabama and resurrected his career, and now is at Ole Miss. So I'm not too worried about Bill O'Brien. Alabama's still Alabama, and I think they're going to be the top in the SEC West until somebody takes them down.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin, when he was offensive coordinator at Alabama, did lose to Ole Miss twice, though. There was those hiccup games. And October 2nd, I don't know if you know this, October 2nd, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss go to Tuscaloosa before they go to College Station. It's a back-to-back week for Alabama. There's a chance for a hiccup there.
Yeah, I did know that. I've got that circled because, really last year, Ole Miss, I guess outside of Florida and the SEC title, gave Alabama their biggest test. So I'm hoping and praying that that's a hard-fought game in Tuscaloosa. I think it will be, and leading up to Alabama's trip to A&M, because Ole Miss, they're going to be tough this year. They're going to get somebody. I don't know who it is, and I say they're going to get somebody. They might be somebody. They might be the one that's beating up on people, because they have that potential if their defense can step up a little bit. So, I'm worried about that game for A&M. If I was a Bama fan, I'd be worried about that game just because Kiffin's going to have it dialed up on offense. And so
I remember telling somebody last year before that game, like, hey, watch out. Lane Kiffin knows that room better than anybody. He knows Saban's mind better than anybody. Like, even though, you might think Ole Miss is down, sure, they've got some talent, but obviously not Alabama talent. Don't count them out. And sure enough, it was 42-42 going into the fourth quarter, and Ole Miss had a real shot to pull it out. So I expect a lot of the same this year from that game.
Yeah, fun story about that game. It was a little bit of rain that day. It was a rainy day. Ole Miss did not actually warm up on the game field. They did all their warm-ups in the IPF, and Alabama was out there by themselves. So Ole Miss appeared for the first time with the run out for what they're doing. So talking about Lane Kiffin playing mind games with Nick Saban, that was exactly what was happening there.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of my things. Let's Mississippi State. We can talk about Mississippi State on this program. Mike Leach and what he's doing. You guys have a history with him going way back to '99 or so at OU and Texas Tech. You guys have seen Mike Leach for years. It takes usually a couple of years for his system to get in. My question is, has his system, without the tweaks that we see, like the Lincoln Riley and things like that, has the game kind of passed it by a little bit?
I'm leaning towards that. Like you said, we've got a long history with Coach Leach. Frankly, he used to kick A&M's ass when he was at Tech. I was scared to play them last year. We've had bad luck with Mississippi State in general since we joined the conference. Nick Fitzgerald used to run all over us. It's one of those things where I think he's a good coach, and I think he'll be pesky and he'll sneak up on people. But I do think in a lot of respects the game has sort of passed him by, especially because, although schools like Alabama and Ole Miss aren't running the same offense that he does, they're putting up the same kind of numbers and the same kind of stats. So his game plan and, his system is slightly different, but defenses nowadays are used to people throwing the ball all over the yard. They're used to giving up big plays, quite frankly. I mean, you look at defenses nowadays and the amount of yards and points they give up is exponentially higher than it was 15, 20 years ago when Mike Leach was really rolling. So while I think, there's a place for his sort of system and the way he does things, I don't think it's as big of a change up as it used to be. And it's not as different as what a lot of schools do to really get them to the point where they're consistently, competing at for the SEC West, let's say. Can they be good? Can they be pesky? Absolutely. But to get them to the point where he had, Texas Tech or even Washington State, who I think was in the top 10 at some point, I think he's going to be a real challenge.
Number 7 at one point.
So I think that'll be a real challenge nowadays.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew was the quarterback.
That's right. Yeah, they were solid when Minshew was there. I don't know. I don't think that it has passed Leach by. That guy's a magician. I don't count that guy out. The Pirate, it usually takes him, from what you've seen at Texas Tech and at Washington State, at least 2 years. And then once he starts getting into, late year 2 and then into year 3, he starts cooking with gas. So, by the way, Mississippi State right now, if you go look at the recruiting rankings, like they're looking pretty solid. He's recruiting well out there. So he needs to get some of his guys in there. He needs to get a little bit more speed. He needs to get some gadget players and a good QB in there. I think he's got a decent one in Cowboy Will Rogers. I think that kid will be all right. He's got 1 year under in Leach's system. So I think it's just going to take a little bit of time there. And like Hank said, I don't know that under Leach they'll ever be, competing for SEC titles as they got to under Dan Mullen. At least got close. I mean, Dan Mullen got those guys to number 1 in the country with Dak Prescott. That's an impressive feat for any coach at Mississippi State. So I don't think Leach is going to be able to do that, but they're going to be darn pesky. And if he keeps recruiting at a level where he can keep it in, the top 25 of the recruiting rankings, he's going to do what he's always done at these other schools, which is at least be nipping at somebody's heels and pick somebody off that nobody expects during the season. So, no, I think it's just going to take a little time for him there, but expect him to be pesky in the next few years and possibly maybe a ceiling of like top 15.
Okay, and we will just change the subject a little bit, get away from Mississippi State, but Arkansas, your former Southwest Conference brethren, no rival in the SEC. They've struggled for 30 years to find somebody consistently. The closest they had was Ole Miss because there was a pre-1992 rivalry between the two, with Texas coming in the league. That game, Arkansas babies are born doing horns down. And there's this weird thing where they've only played Oklahoma 14 times. Is Arkansas the big winner of this expansion?
Yeah, I think to some degree they are. Aggies obviously hate the Longhorns too, but I've talked to a lot of Arkansas buddies and they can't stand them either. So they're excited for that game to come back. I think I love what they have going on with Sam Pittman. Nobody expected him to win 3 games last year while he was implementing his system and after the Chad Morris era. So turn that damn jukebox on. I'm buying into the Sam Pittman stuff. I don't know that necessarily this year is going to be the year where they get over the hump, but I think recruits are buying into his message. I think they're buying into that program. So I think, in 3 years and 4 years, I think Sam Pittman is going to be making some noise in the SEC and hopefully beating those horns.
All right. The Hammer and Bossman Slim from Biscuits and SEC, nice enough to stop by and join us today. Hopefully during the season you will see them contributing a little bit on SEC After Dark with me and Corey Burton, and we'll get on to talk a little SEC football. Hopefully they'll be nice enough to do that. But guys, I really appreciate you stopping by. This should air on Friday morning. And if you need anything, let me know, okay?
You got it, Stephen. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it, and I hope to be back soon.
All right.
Yep, this was a pleasure. Thank you, Stephen.
All right, we'll catch you guys later. This has been SEC After Dark Interviews.